Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today we're at the end. Early on in my read through of the Complete Eightball, this new paperback version from Fantagraphics, where they've got everything in Facsimile Edition, I was struggling. If you watch the videos all the way, props to you for sticking through me struggle for the like first half of it. And if you haven't seen them all, know that in the beginning I was really not enjoying myself too much, but now I've been enjoying it quite a bit, and I'm glad I plowed through. And now I'm sad that there's no more left. Because I was really enjoying where Clowes was going, so that just like propels me forward into whatever else of his work I don't have. So this is number 18, the last one in this collection. You get here Ghost World. So he's got to close off Ghost World. He's decided that after this issue, he's going to focus on single stories and graphic novels and things like that, not the anthology format of 8-Ball anymore. So this is the last little bit of like kaleidoscope storytelling and anthology storytelling. And I think that's appropriate. You know, it's obvious that he's pushing against the boundaries of the floppy format and needs longer stories. So we're back to Ghost World here to wrap up. So you obviously get Becca and Enid's relationship is falling apart as they're now leaving high school. Enid's supposedly going to be going off to college, actually doesn't wind up doing that, but that puts a fracture in their relationship where they both realize they're going to have to grow up and move on. The kind of odd lesbian undertones about does one of them like another doesn't really resolve. They just kind of break up basically. This right here was really funny. Enid goes and she buys a hearse, and part of that's probably just her like punk rock individualism, but some of it too is it's just like saving her money. And this stuck out to me because when I went to the Joe Kubert school in 2000, I was there from like late August to Christmas break of 2000, and then I dropped out and came home. People, I don't know if Ed Piskor's ever talked about this on Cartoonist Kayfabe. He seems to have a much better memory for everyone at the Kubert school than I did. I had a lot of anxiety problems, and I just was not prepared. Not that I wasn't prepared to be at the Kubert school, but I just wasn't prepared to be out on my own. I don't think I hadn't had my anxiety disorder diagnosed, and so I don't remember much of it. I didn't even remember that me and Ed Piskor were there at the same time until I started seeing Cartoonist Kayfabe and him talking about going to Kubert, and I was like, I bet we went there at the same time. Like, I vaguely remember that guy, but he would remember, and he could probably tell you the name. There was a kid there that same year that we were there who drove a hearse, and again, because like that had been the cheapest thing, but it was kind of like everyone was like, oh, that cool guy that drives the hearse, or at least that was my impression of it. I really was isolated, self-isolating there quite a bit, except for the guys that I lived with. I didn't really get to know or talk to anyone else, which was stupid of me, but I was having problems. But yeah, that just like brought me right back to that. So if Piskor's never talked about that, maybe someone can hit him up on Cartoonist Kayfabe and asked about the kid at Kubert School who drove the hearse. I'd be interested to see if he remembers his name. The little bit of chat I've had with him on Instagram, he seems to remember pretty much everyone's name really, really clearly. So here the characters, and this is I think what this final chapter is all about, is growing up and how growing up brings identity change, right? That you evolve yourself a bit. And Enid is talking about like it will be cool to go to another town and become a totally different person, and so she's hesitant to have her friend come along because her friend would remember who she was. And in my experience of moving around quite a bit, that's very true. When I went to like Kubert school, I wasn't able to do that because I was ill. I needed some medication for the anxiety, and so I didn't really get to be anyone other than who I was. When I moved to Berkeley, I was married, so I took someone with me that knew me in the context of my hometown of Modesto. But when I went to Cranbrook and lived in Michigan, I was older. I was 28. I had more self-confidence, and I was going into a place where no one knew me. I didn't take anyone with me that had any prior conceptions, and I've never felt more like myself than I did there, because I was able to entirely reinvent myself for the best. And I would recommend that for anyone who's never had that opportunity, that doesn't have ties. Go somewhere that you've never been before and live there for a while. And you can really, no one has any preconceptions. And I noticed that even more clearly when I moved back home after having been in Michigan for 4 years. And all of a sudden, I was like kind of a shittier person. I went to being like the things that, made me not so great in high school kind of came back. And I realized that's because my family still had that impression of who I was. They didn't know the new me. There's these loops you get into. The ways that you drive around town are like these subconscious patternings that just kind of trigger old memories and things. And it really brought me back, and I had to struggle to reestablish the part of myself that I liked in a world that was kind of shoehorning me into my old self. And so I think that's a really smart instinct on Enid's part, that is a good thing to be able to get to where no one knows you and start over, especially at this age where you really can become a full individual. Obviously, that puts a barrier in their relationship. And then this final scene here where Enid walks by the diner that they always used to be at, and she sees Becca in there, probably as a worker taking her break. I think she's in there as a waitress now. From a previous scene, you see that she's in there, or maybe she's just working at a coffee shop. So she just sees there by herself, and just kind of says, "You've grown into a very beautiful young woman," and walks away and gets on a bus and leaves town, even though she's not gotten into college. And that's a beautiful, sad, like bittersweet little ending there. And again, I've been saying it a lot, but this is Clowes as a fully mature writer now, not just a great cartoonist who's ranting against society, but man, like really, really powerful emotional stuff. Then there's this tipped in modern cartoonist, which from the inside front cover seems like something that was randomly distributed. It wasn't in every copy of issue 18, and so they put this in here. I think probably at the time this came out, like the little diatribe he goes on here about what comics are and what they could be and why to do comics was probably really impactful on a lot of people in 1997. But to me, now that comics are here and have actually surpassed this point, I get it. This is like a historical thing where you're doing a facsimile edition, but I didn't take much out of this. I know a lot of people are glad this is in here. I wouldn't have known anyways, so I don't have much to say about that. But it's cool that they put it in there. They managed to like tip it in with some glue, which was impressive. I always wonder how Fantagraphics gets the book binders to do all these crazy things like that, because we would definitely like to try them. And then this last one here is kind of just like a little, like I'm wrapping up 8-Ball, and so I'm gonna do an homage to superhero stuff and basically kind of like a Watchmen take on what a schlub a real life superhero would be. I don't know. I don't know what that was about, but it just seems like he had to get that off his chest. I think he went on to do that Death Ray story soon after that. Anyways, I'm not a huge historian with the timeline all in my head, but that just kind of seems like what it is. It seems like something he needed to get out of his system to move on, but I didn't find it a particularly compelling story. And then what I really like about this page here is he's selling his own books through a comic strip, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you come over and see my dad's pornographic comic books?" And then he just goes through all of the stuff that you can buy from Clowes. So I thought that was a fun little bit. And then you get the back cover here with another one of these awesome gouache pieces. And then what I really like about this, and I don't know what else this has been in, but obviously it's a callback to the design of this a little bit. You have these behind the 8-Ball notes, and here I found a couple things worth noting. It seems like Enid, I don't know what Enid's last name is in the story, but it seems like the name Enid is an anagram of the letters in Daniel Clowes. So that's cool, because I did feel like he was speaking through that character more than the other ones in the book. And then here, when he's talking about 8-Ball 17 with gynecology, he does say that he was feeling the urge to do a longer, denser story, which led to a number of other factors, and him shifting away to the David Boring story and Ice Haven, Death Ray, these longer form things that aren't collected in this book, because in his mind, like the true 8-Ball is the anthology versions, and then these other ones more like standalone things, and he was just using this popular vehicle to get them out there. And that was good, nice confirmation of like the feeling I got with gynecology and with Ghost World, is that he was needing to move on to graphic novels, and thank goodness he did, because you can see him grow into that through these stories. So also, like, my final assessment of 8-Ball as a chunk, because this is a big ass chunk of really, really well drawn comics. It's a really cool artifact. I really, really enjoyed it. Like anyone who's been following along, and like I said at the beginning of this video, I obviously had trouble with the early angsty Clowes. That's just not the kind of thing I enjoy. It's obviously well done, just not my kind of thing. But this stands as a really, really nice snapshot of an era, of a generation, of a certain mentality. And then it also shows the artist learning and bucking and growing out of kind of the cultural values of Gen X, right? You know, he starts as the angsty, ironic, lash out, make fun of everybody, critical asshole, and evolves into a truly thoughtful, great storyteller while, you know, creating a little time capsule of the 90s. And as someone who was like a teenager throughout the 90s, it brings me back. Like, I understand all of that ethos. That was kind of the ethos I grew up in too. And it's really nice to view 8-Ball as a totality and watch the evolution of an artist. I think that's my favorite thing about getting bodies of work, is watching the evolution of someone, and especially someone who is using the art to push themselves and to rethink things. And so I really, really, by the end of this, come to a kind of value 8-Ball as a chunk of stuff. Even though I don't like the earlier issues, when you put them together, the picture they paint of the evolution of someone is really great. And I would never suggest someone not reading the earlier issues and just jumping to the later stuff. I think you need to read it and experience it as a whole, because of that sense of growth. The same way like Cerebus is like 25 years of one man's evolution. You may not like where he's gone, you know, but it's good to see the evolution. Here, I don't like where he started, and I quite like where he wound up. And I think that's really important. So these are precious things where you get to see that, and where someone does that partially in response to what the public's telling them, right? It's a really great way to make yourself accountable if you actually listen. And I think that and the time capsule nature of 8-Ball really, really make this a super valuable collection. So really appreciate everyone that's followed along, especially through the earlier issues where I was angsty about him being angsty and made it to here. Really appreciate people sticking around for that. So thank you so much. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel and you want to support us, the two best ways to do that are first through our Patreon. We have a couple different tiers of exclusive content, interaction, voting rights, things like that you can sign up for. Any money that we get from that is part of what we use to buy the books that we review. So try to turn that money back into other creators' pockets and just help us keep exposing you all to hopefully some new stuff. And then the best way to support the mission of Living the Line is to support what Sean's doing with Living the Line Publishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at one of his products now. The Eisner nominated The Strange Death of Alex Raymond by Dave Sim and myself. This is a gorgeously illustrated and designed book. Dave doing most of the illustration. Amazing compositions throughout. What Dave is doing is he's recording his obsession with the death of master cartoonist Alex Raymond behind the wheel of Stan Drake's car when they got into a car crash. The best description of the book that I've heard is that it's like understanding comics with pages like this mixed with something like From Hell, when you get into the theories about, you know, what actually happened with the car crash. And then with Sean on production, it's just one of the most gorgeously printed books you could get a hold of. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.